What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Channel for Healing podcast. This is episode 2. I'm so excited to be here. I had so much fun the first time, and I want to thank everybody for such a warm welcome. I've received so much incredible feedback, so much support, and everybody has really shown up big for me and welcomed me into this space. And I really am so incredibly grateful. So I just have so much more to share with you, so many more things that I've learned throughout my journey. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your comments. I want to hear what you want to hear more of, what you like, what you don't like, all the things. Okay. So thank you for being here with me. And we're just going to get right into it. So last time on episode 1, I talked a lot about control and how control is the opposite of connection, right? I talked about having less ego and more soul and really connecting with the self and how that allows you to connect with others. For me, the final stage of, this childhood trauma that I experienced, throughout my very young childhood and into my adolescence and my teen years that I then carried through my adulthood, the final stage of that healing for me is really helping others. And that's why I'm so passionate about this. And I'll be honest, that is the sole reason that I am here and will continue to be here with you. So just as you walked with me in episode 1, I want to thank you for being here and walking with me now for episode 2. And I ask that you continue to walk with me and, show up as you are, come as you are, and we'll be on this journey together. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is really that control connection thing, right? I want you to really think about that. How is control showing up in your life? What is it holding you back from? The ironic thing is that we want to control things. We want to keep a tight grip on things because it allows us to feel safe, right? It allows us to feel protected. And a lot of times we don't realize it, but it really has the opposite effect of what we're trying to do. I want to ask you, how do you color your world? How are you coloring your world? What's the truth of who you are? What does that look like? I really want you to sit with that. How are you showing up? Are you showing up trying to micromanage things, trying to control things, trying to, look elsewhere, trying to find, that protection? You're fighting for control, but you really want the connection. That control is really preventing you from exactly what you're looking for in terms of real, true connection, not only with others, but with yourself as well. So I want you to really sit with that. How do you color your world? How are you showing up? Sit with that for a minute and think about that and ask yourself, who is the truth of who I am? What does that really, really look like? We become a little more free every single time we face our fears. And it can be really scary to really show up exactly as you are, be vulnerable to the world, and show the world the things that we're afraid of, maybe our imperfections, the things that we might not be good at. I was just talking to my podcast producer, Rob, who's there in the background watching. Rob, give us a wave.
Hey there. How's everyone?
I was just speaking with him about how it feels really scary and unsafe for me when I try something new and I'm not good at it initially. Even when we were recording episode 1 and, some clips and stuff, when they weren't perfect, I was like, like I would kind of do that. And he'd be like, we don't have to, stomp our feet. And I'm like, I'm a foot stomper. I'm having a tantrum right now because it just doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel safe. And I want to encourage you to just get comfortable being uncomfortable. When we kind of lean into that fear, it really allows for freedom. It really allows for freedom. And I want you to really think about where you can find freedom. Where are you lacking freedom in your life right now? We're all kind of in this transformative state, right? When things rise up, when we're reactive to other people, when people piss us off and they bother us, our friends, our spouses, coworkers, people that are in our lives, family members, siblings, parents, whatever it is, when we're activated, I like to say, when we're activated or triggered by things, that's connected to something else. It's really not about what's happening in the present time. It really is figuring out what that's connected to that feels familiar, right? And I mentioned this on episode 1 too. So we're really all in this transformative state where we're when if we're feeling activated by something, or if we're feeling agitated by something, something's causing us to react to something. There's a source of where that energy comes from. And I'm encouraging you to do the work and really figure out where that comes from and what that looks like for you. Um, are you chasing the drama to avoid the trauma in your life? I certainly was doing that for so many years. I was blaming other people. I was angry. I was resentful. I was judgmental. I was, um, self-sabotaging. All those things just come up. We chase those things, we gossip, we do all those things because we're avoiding something in our lives that's unresolved. And I really want you to think about that when we're not happy with the way that somebody's reacting or responding to us. What that really is that that's us making assumptions because we're afraid to ask the questions that give us the clarity that we need to feel safe and feel secure and feel protected, because it feels familiar to something that happened in our past that's just unresolved and needs a little more work. It needs a little more time. It needs a little bit more of our energy. And I encourage you to really lean into that and give yourself some grace when you feel those feelings come up. That's been a huge source of what sort of got me on this journey to healing. That's a big part of, the truth of who I am, that I had all of these unresolved things that I really hadn't dealt with, that I didn't really know how to deal with, to be honest with you. I heard on a podcast that I love recently, they talked about something called psychological homelessness. And that really struck a chord with me because I had all these emotions and feelings for a long time that I just didn't know what to do with. And when I heard the term psychological homelessness, I thought, wow, that makes so much sense. That really puts like a name on all these feelings that I didn't know where to place them. I didn't know how to compartmentalize these things in my life, and it just felt like chaos. And I'll talk a little bit more about that chaos and that clutter in our lives a little bit later. But I really want you to really recognize that we're all in a transformative state, and that should be an ongoing thing. It should be an ongoing process. We have to make room for new energy, but we can't do that until we're dealing with the things that come up as they come up. I remember feeling really, I'll say, scared and fearful, as I was doing this work on my journey, because I remember feeling like, I don't like, what does this mean? Like, I'm activated by these things. I'm feeling needy in this way. I'm looking to other people for, certain, to validate my feelings or to acknowledge how I'm feeling. And like, why am I doing that? I'm recognizing maybe, that I had some codependent tendencies, and that was like really scary for me. Like, you read something, you're like, oh crap, that's me, and that can be terrifying. And I want to really let you know that, like, don't be scared by those things, because knowledge is power. Information can really empower you. And again, it goes back to understanding. It goes back to really, the more we take the time to understand ourselves and other people, it really, with compassion and empathy, that understanding really allows the things in our lives that are bothersome and that are really activating us, it really allows those things to become much more subdued when you have an understanding of where it comes from. Once I realized, oh gosh, I have these codependent tendencies, you know what, that's just like not a label. Like, that's not a label that's meant for me, but it's not scary once I know, okay, this is tied to something in my past. This is tied to something that I've experienced that's unresolved. This is tied to something that happened to me when I was a child that I didn't have the tools, the knowledge, or you know, the wherewithal to navigate. It would have been impossible for me to navigate the emotions that were coming up as a child and the confusion. And So I really want you to, keep in mind that it really is, this journey should be an unveiling. It should be a shedding. It should be an unbecoming of the things that you were never meant to carry, all the labels and the judgments that people placed on you. I really want you to just get rid of those things and give yourself grace and honor and validate the each version of the person, the man or the woman or the child that you were throughout your life, because that person, that soul really really deserves your love before you get it from anybody else. And that's really truly where it starts. And that's why I feel so passionate about doing this work. It's really teaching you and empowering you and showing you the tools that I learned throughout my journey to really show up for yourself and create this safe space that is, for lack of a better term, like your own personal validation. It's really, you become triumphant in validating and acknowledging yourself when maybe you looked for that elsewhere your entire life, like I know that I did personally. It really is about connecting the dots. Like I said, we really have to make room for new energy and give ourselves permission to make new choices throughout our lives. Just because we've done the same things and reacted the same way and made the same choices throughout our whole lives, and people expect certain things of us, that doesn't mean that that needs to continue to happen. It doesn't. So give yourself permission to make new choices. Give yourself grace when you're screwing up and you're making mistakes and things don't necessarily feel comfortable. When you're uncomfortable, you're growing and you're changing. And I promise you that you'll feel the difference. When you make new choices, you feel different. When you start showing up for yourself, you feel very different. Have compassion and empathy, not only for yourself, but for other people. I remember going through my own personal journey and, with my relationships and my friendships, my family, my spouse, my kids, I remember, feeling like, what the hell? Like, I had these expectations that I had placed on everybody that were very unfair and unrealistic. But they came from somewhere. I had these expectations because I was trying to create this sense of safety and this protection. And, I had created, I went through life so hyper vigilant to try to create these things, when ultimately I learned on this journey that it really mirrors back at me what I need to be doing. It's not what somebody else needs to be doing for me. So that compassion and empathy piece is so important, because not only with other people should you be having compassion, empathy, and saying kind of, help me understand, basically, right? Help me understand. But you should be doing that for yourself. When those feelings bubble up and boil up and you feel, emotionally out of control, I want you to ask yourself, like, help me understand this. Help me understand what this is connected to. Help me understand where this is coming from. Help me understand what is unresolved, and really sit with it, because I promise you it does come from somewhere. Big reactions have very deep roots. If you're being activated by something, that's coming from somewhere. And you may not know it in the moment. You may not know what it comes from. I remember for months and months talking with my husband and saying, like, listen, I don't need you to do anything. I don't need you to change anything. I don't need you to apologize. I need you to know that I feel some kind of way about this. I feel some kind of way about the way you responded to me. I feel some kind of way about your reaction to me telling you how I was feeling. And he would oftentimes say, I'm sorry, I apologize. And I'd say, I don't want you to apologize. I don't need you to apologize. I just need you to hear me. And I just need to say it. I don't need him to do anything differently. I needed to show up for me. I didn't need him to do anything else. Because the reality is, I want him to show up exactly as he is, as his authentic self, and share with me the things that matter to him. I want him to follow his heart and his soul. I don't want him to wear a mask when he shows up with me. I don't want him to be afraid of my reaction about anything, right? I want him to be able to show up in all the ways. My kids, everybody in my life, I want them to show up in all the ways that are authentic to them. But the only way that they can do that, the only way that you can create space for people to do that in your lives, in your relationship, is if you do it yourself. Because then you don't need anything else, but it allows that space for someone to really be their authentic self and feel a sense of safety. But remember, like I said, that those big reactions, those have big roots. It's attached to something. It's always attached to something. We don't always have to know what that's attached to. But really think about it, really sit with it. Once we acknowledge something and once we say, okay, I don't know where this is coming from, I don't know what this is connected to, but it's connected to something. And I'm committed to doing the work of finding out what that is and what that looks like and what that's attached to. And you'll recognize the more it happens, you'll see how it's impacting your life. Went to therapy for a lot of years. I'm still in therapy. I think therapy is like the greatest thing ever. I think everyone should be in therapy, to be quite honest with you. I view therapy as my gym membership. I work out all the time too, but this is like my emotional gym membership. It's a gift to myself to go to therapy and have somebody who is like not connected to my life at all to listen and to just give me an outside perspective that I may not have. For me, it's like the greatest gift ever. But I just really value that time and that commitment to myself. I don't always know what something is when it's coming up. But what I've learned to do, and I learned this tool in therapy, is when something bubbles up for me, to catch it, check it, and change it. Right? I might not know what something's connected to, but I know if I'm feeling agitated about something, I need to like make myself aware of it. I need to say, okay, this is an issue for me. I'm feeling some kind of way about this. And I want to know more about this. I want to really try to understand what deep roots this is connected to. I want to know what this is attached to. I want to know how I can do better in the future, because when I identify it, it's no longer going to keep me held hostage. It's no longer going to, anchor me to this feeling of uneasiness. So think about that. I want you to catch it, and then you check it. You check it and you say, you know, I need to make note of this. I need to figure out what this is connected to. And again, you may not know, but once you do the work of figuring out what it's connected to, we really are able to change it and make that change. And it's so important to be able to do that. So that was a really helpful tool for me as I was going through my journey of healing this childhood trauma and sexual abuse that I experienced, was this catch it, check it, change it. It's a tool that I use all the time. And it's now not really something that I think consciously about. It's just kind of like an automatic thing that happens. So that was really useful for me with, connecting the dots. It wasn't very easy at first. It's not easy to really dive in and give yourself a real good hard look in the mirror. It's scary, right? And I was scared and I was fearful. And I always say, because it's someone else's quote, I don't know who, but I repeat it. A life lived in fear is a life half lived. And I was living in fear, trying to control things for so long, wanting so badly and so desperately to connect with the hearts of other people. And I didn't realize the entire time until very recently, the last few years, that was the very thing that was preventing me from connecting with people, was that need to have control and that hypervigilance and that always needing to know what was going to happen next and feel prepared. But once I connected those dots and realized this is connected to a major trauma that I experienced as a child, I was able to give my younger self grace and really walk myself through the healing process. So I really, I want to ask you to give yourself permission to feel those things. I think that I didn't give myself permission to feel those things for a really long time. And that was causing me to live in fear and live a life that was not full out, that was not authentic, that was not allowing me to show up as my true self, flaws and everything, exposed to the world, and say, like, I'm okay with this. Because again, I was looking for that external validation, that external acknowledgement for other people to keep me safe and protected and show up in a certain way that was kind of unfair, right? Because the reality is everybody in our lives has their own experiences. They have their own story, their own path that they've walked that has caused them to show up in all the ways that they do. And it's caused them to have all the imperfections that they do. It's caused them to have all the triggers and get agitated and activated by the things that they do. And those things are oftentimes things we know nothing about. But I promise you that when you start leaning into your own feelings, when you really allow yourself to feel and you really listen to what your heart is saying when you sit in those feelings, it allows you, again, not only to have empathy and compassion for yourself, but to give it to other people in your life that really need it. And they may not even know you need it. They need it at the time. They may not even know that they need it. But it's a game changer. It's a game changer. So really give yourself permission to feel. Sit with the things that are unresolved and unsettling. The reason oftentimes that we feel unsettled in life is because we were not meant to settle, right? We were not meant to settle. I want you to like really reframe the things that you're thinking about. Oftentimes, I know this was true for me, we can have a victim mentality. I was so angry for the longest time, for years, for the things that I had experienced as a child. And it held me hostage. It held me hostage. I was waiting for the person that harmed me to heal. I was holding my healing hostage to waiting for that person to heal. And that was never going to happen. That was never, I'd be waiting till the end of time still. If I was holding out hope that that was going to happen, it just wasn't. And I realized that eventually, and I started doing the work. I started doing the work of myself, really getting to know who am I really? Not who am I showing up as? Who do people want me to be? But really, who am I and what do I want? It's really setting boundaries. It's really surrendering and giving up that need for control that I keep on speaking about, and aligning your intentions with higher wisdom. Like what do you want? We have to align those things. For me, like I said, this trauma that I experienced as a kid, for the longest time, I was like, this is the worst thing. Like, why did this happen to me? Like, this literally changed the course of my entire life, and I didn't deserve this. And you know what? All those things are true, but I reframed the way that I spoke to myself. I reframed everything that I was thinking. And I can tell you that, is that the worst thing that's happened to me in my life? It is. But I look at it now as the best worst thing. That's what I call it. The best worst thing that ever happened to me, because I found gratitude in especially the really hard parts of my life. And it's allowed me to change and grow and really show up in all the ways that I was meant to, in all the ways that I need to for myself and for other people. And it's allowed me to share my story. The hard parts of our lives, if you let them, they really allow you to connect with people. And if you can find gratitude in the things that happened for you, not to you, then you can really make a difference, not only in your own life, but in the lives of other people. And so have really made it a choice to find gratitude in the hard parts, because I know that even though this was the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life, it's the best worst thing, because I would never be the person that I am now had these things not happened to me. I would not be the mother that I am. I would not be the friend that I am, the spouse that I am, the daughter that I am. I don't know if I said friend. Did I say friend? I don't know. If not, it'll be on the blooper reel. But it really is about making sure that you're showing up in those ways and recognizing that things have happened for you to help you grow and change and add value, not only to your own life, but to the lives of other people. And for me, that is my most important mission is, we rise by lifting others. I say that all the time. I live by that. It's just such the way of life for me. It's so important that, I don't have to focus my life on making a lot of money or doing well or, reaching a certain status, because I know that if I'm adding value to other people, all those other things will fall into place. All those other things will fall into place because we truly do rise by lifting others, right? And we can add value to somebody else and we can leave people better than we found them. Your life will change. And that's certainly what happened for me. Um, so yeah, I really want you to continue to, ask yourself, how do you color your world? How are you showing up? Are you really, like, I asked myself, am I free from me for a long time? Am I free from me? I wasn't. I was really trying to control every single thing. So freedom really is found in that surrender. And it can't be forced. I have a somebody that I have worked with for the last few years on this healing journey. I've helped guide her and kind of coached her through her healing. And I talked to her a lot about like freedom and finding freedom and really trusting yourself and really, that it's not forced. It's not a forced thing. It's flow. It's not force. It's flow. And there's a big difference. But again, it goes back to that control thing. And I remember her saying to me very recently, um, that seems so abstract to me. That seems so abstract. And I feel frustrated because I don't know how to just lean in and to just trust. And again, it's all connected. I had things happen to me as a kid that caused me not to be able to trust really anybody in my life. Family, friends, relationships, everybody, okay? Um but the reality is it's because I didn't know how to trust myself. I don't need to trust anybody else unless I trust myself. And then when you start trusting yourself and your decisions and you're putting up boundaries, it allows you to trust other people because you trust yourself and you trust the decisions that you're going to make. And it really does truly make a big difference. And, you're no longer, you don't have to be held hostage anymore. You have all these pieces of yourself. I had these pieces of me from my whole life that just, I didn't know how to make sense of them until I really started leaning in and looking at that mirror. Other people are just a mirror for me. When I'm getting, agitated or aggravated or activated or triggered by somebody else, it really is, again, just a mirror looking back at me, showing me the things that I need to work on with myself. Like, where is this connected to? And I encourage you really to do the same. Um, you know, I know for me, I felt really lost for a long time. I felt lost. I felt upside down in my emotions. I didn't know how to make sense of things and my feelings for a really long time. And maybe you're feeling that way. Maybe you're feeling like you're lost. And I just want to encourage you and I want to remind you that you're not lost. You're just finding your way. You're finding your way. You're on this journey to finding yourself. And I think I even mentioned this on my last podcast too. Where I felt like I was losing my mind at some points, but I was losing my mind to find my soul. And it, all that really is this guide to really identifying what your authentic self looks like and what your soul purpose is. We have to be, I'm a former first grade teacher, right? And school's never out for the teacher, right? The teacher should always be learning. And that's why it's so important for me to show up for you and to show up in the ways and be vulnerable and really kind of bare my soul and share my experience and my journey and the things that I've gone through in my life, because um it's really important for me to help other people become empowered on this journey, because it's not always easy, but I promise you it'll always be worth it. And you're worth it. You're worth it. You always have been and you always will be. You may not have known it, but I promise you that that's the case. And if you stay on this journey with me, you will realize it. You will realize it. And I'll continue to remind you for sure. Um, if you haven't heard the end of it, you haven't heard the heart of it. I mean, that's the truth. If things keep coming up for you in your life, get out of your head and into your heart. I tend to talk in quotes because I really like them, but yeah, get out of your head and into your heart. And really, if it keeps coming up for you, there's more to it. And you may not know what that is or what that looks like right away, but I really want you to, again, do the work and remind yourself that you're worth it and you should invest in that time and that energy. For a long time I was expecting all these people, like I said, to create this sense of safety for me instead of creating that sense of safety and protection for myself. I was expecting people to hold space for me, and because they were wherever they were on their journeys, they didn't know how to do that. And I unfairly would judge and assume, right? Make those assumptions because I was afraid to ask the questions that would give me clarity. Um, but I learned to stop doing that because I can't expect people to meet me where I am, right? I can't expect them to know where I am in my journey when I haven't even figured that out, when I'm having trouble make sense of that. So think about those expectations, not only that you're putting on yourself, but on other people too, and ask yourself, are they fair? Are they fair? Um, Trauma comes up in so many different ways for different people. Sometimes it's, external things where it shows up in our lives. A lot of times it's internal, and it's anxiety, and it can manifest in so many different ways. But again, it comes back to you. It's not about blaming somebody else or hoping and wishing somebody would show up for you differently. It really is what it is, right? It really is just about, whenever you feel however you feel, is really just allowing yourself to be there in that moment and acknowledge that and sit with it and hold space for yourself and ask yourself, how supported do I feel when overwhelming and upsetting things happen? How safe am I, and have my needs been met? But oftentimes we ask that of other people, but we really need to turn that inward again with that mirror, and ask ourselves, am I meeting those needs? Am I showing up for myself when I'm feeling upset by something or when upsetting things happen? Childhood trauma and the things we've experienced in our lives, those things, our trauma is not our fault, but our healing is our responsibility. And I really want you to think about that. We have all these expectations of other people and how we think they should show up in our lives, and we get disappointed when they don't. I know for me, like, expectation was the root of all my heartbreak in my life. And I realized that wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to me, and certainly wasn't fair to other people who had no idea what the hell had happened to me in my life. I was carrying this story people knew nothing about, that I packed in this backpack and carried with me my whole life, and I could barely carry it at some days because it was so heavy. But yet I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't share it with anybody. I didn't know how to sometimes walk a couple extra feet because I was carrying this, but yet I expected other people to come say, let me carry that for you. Um, and I learned that the work really had to start with me. I had to put that bag down. I had to give myself grace. I had to learn about all the parts of me, even the parts that were really, really hard. So, that trauma doesn't just come back as a feeling. Oftentimes it comes back as a reaction. When we're reacting, responding to other people who are carrying their own really heavy backpacks that we have no idea they're carrying, that we haven't said, hey, can I carry that for you? Or I think you should put that down, or can we take a peek inside together? Those are the important pieces. It's learning to use the tools of breath and awareness to really quiet our mind and come back to our body and say, like, what is that really connected to? The stuff that we haven't healed is really heavy. It's impacting, it's restricting, and it's just not meant for us. It's not meant for us. I can tell you that. We've carried it for way too long. So again, give yourself the opportunity to make new choices. And the things going on outside of our body, they don't always have to be allowed inside. We can use that tool that I shared with you, that I learned in therapy, to catch it, check it, change it. That's really been a game changer for me. And I'm not asking you to be an expert right now. I know that it can feel scary, but all confidence is the willingness to try. And so I'm asking you to just have a little bit of confidence in yourself. which just means be willing to try. Be willing to take the first step and say, how can I heal the things that are unresolved with me? And how can I show up differently in my life and the lives of others by doing that? Everything affects your mood, right? The way that we show up in the world. We need to really ask for what we need. Sometimes that's healing. Sometimes that's peace. Sometimes that's wisdom. Sometimes that's, some guidance. Sometimes that's we're asking for abundance. Ask for what you need. Ask for what you need, but start asking yourself for what you need, because only you really know what that looks like. I knew what I needed from other people, but I wasn't giving that to myself. I was expecting it from other people, and I wasn't giving it to myself because I wasn't showing up authentically and is exactly as I really truly am, by getting rid of all the things that were never meant for me, that weren't serving me. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of all of those things: the healing, the clarity, the peace, the wisdom, the abundance, the guidance. But gratitude is really, really key, because what you focus on grows. So when you have a victim mentality, it will really keep you stuck. And it kept me stuck for a really, really long time. And it weighed down even heavier that bag that I was carrying, that I hadn't shared with anybody, but at the same time still expected people to know about. Think about, what are the things that need healing for you? What are the signs that you need healing? I know for me, it was all those unresolved feelings. It was judging other people. It was reacting in a harsh way, or less than ideal, I'd like to say. It was self-sabotage. It was staying quiet when I knew I shouldn't have. It was not using my voice and thinking I wasn't going to be heard. It was chaos. Um, you know, Instead, when you feel those things, really catch it, check it, change it. Think about, okay, how can I be observing something instead of judging, right? Observing is really seeing what's happening without making those assumptions that we tend to make. And those assumptions, by the way, we make because of our own experience and because of the things that are unresolved with us. How can I respond without reacting? How can I, responding is just asking somebody for that clarity. It's not responding with assumptions. It's that self-love instead of that self-sabotage. It's giving ourselves grace and really listening to the things that we need, and not feeling badly about it. It's instead of resenting other people, it's setting those boundaries. And, like, let's face it, people do not like when you start setting boundaries, and I can totally vouch for this. It was a real challenge for me when I started setting boundaries in my life, and people did not like it. And it tends to be this kind of dance, because the reality is, when you start setting boundaries in your own life, people have to change. People have to change based on the boundaries that you're setting and the things that you're comfortable with. And two things can happen, right? You can either continue those relationships, and the people in your life will make those adjustments, and maybe they'll set a few of their own boundaries and they'll maybe adhere to yours. Or people are going to say, I'm not willing to do that because I like the old you better. I like the silent you better. I liked the you who was, kept quiet and didn't rock the boat and didn't ruffle anybody's feathers. And that's how I can have control over you instead of you having control over yourself. So one of two things is going to happen, but you have to ask yourself, what matters to me, right? I talked about this chaos versus this peace. And, you know, um, there's somebody that lives in my town, and, she probably doesn't even know that this really made an impact on me. And this is part of why I want to share it with you, because you never know how you're going to impact people. But her name's Maggie, and she is like a decluttering and organizational guru. Her name's Maggie Britton, and she owns the Chesterfield Organization Company. And I have too much stuff in my life. I have too much everything. Too many shoes, too many everything, too many things in my house. And she said something. I was watching her, I think, Instagram story maybe a month ago. And she said, where there is less clutter, there is more you. And it really hit me. It hit me like a train. And she's right. She's right. It's not just about the physical clutter or the physical chaos. It's that too for me, but for me, it was so much about the emotional clutter and the emotional chaos. And I heard her, Maggie, thank you. I heard her when she said, where there's less clutter, there's more of you. And I started really going back to that every day when I started making certain decisions in my life, when I was feeling overwhelmed. And I reminded myself, where there's less clutter and there's less chaos, there's more of me. And there should be. And that matters. And I want you to remind yourself of that too, because it's so important. And I'm so grateful, by the way, that Maggie shared that on her story weeks ago. And she probably doesn't even know that it made an impact. And that's why it's important for me to say that here, because it made such a tremendous difference. You never know what somebody is carrying. You never know just the one thing that you might say that might add value to somebody. And that added so much value to me and really changed how I go into every single day. Every single day. So, Maggie's telling her story and helping and sharing in decluttering ways, right? And I'm showing up and sharing my story and in these ways that are vulnerable in talking about the journey that I've been on to healing. What's your way, right? What do you have locked inside that you might share with somebody that might change not only their lives, but yours, right? People need to know that we're adding value to them or that they're adding value to us. And that's what really this is all about, right? This is so much bigger than us, so much bigger than the little worlds and bubbles that we live in. It's about so much more. Transformation doesn't just happen, you know? The story that we tell ourselves and the way that we view ourselves really changes how we show up in the world. And I'm asking you to really take a look at what is your story really? What does your story really look like? What really is your true story? Because I promise you, it's not the story you've been telling yourself. It's not the story that other people have been telling you. It's not the labels and the judgments and the assumptions that people have placed on you and made for you. You get to decide. You get to decide, and you can continue to grow and change and show up in all the ways that you need to. If your life is a hurricane right now, I'm asking you to pop up in the eye of a hurricane. What happened? Does anybody know? This is not a classroom, so no one's raising their hands, but thanks for listening. Oh, Rob, you're answering?
I'm here. I'm raising my hand.
I love it. Rob, do you know? I'm putting you on the spot. Do you know what happens when you pop up in the eye of the hurricane? What's happening in the middle?
Yeah, it's super calm. I watched George
Yeah.
Clooney and Marky and the Funky Bunch get through it all together. They thought they were
Yes.
they thought they were out for
They
a
did.
second. They thought they were out, and
They
then
did.
not so much, not
Yeah.
so out.
But that's what happens when we pop up in the eye of a hurricane. It's really, really calm. But we're afraid, right? We're afraid that it's going to be like this chaotic storm of all these things, and we're afraid. So we avoid it. And avoidance is anxiety's best friend. The more that we feel anxious, the more that we avoid. But I'm asking you to pop up in the eye of your hurricane, even though it feels really scary. Don't live a life half lived because you're living in fear. I'm here to walk with you. And I'm so grateful you're here. And you're right on time. So thanks for joining me. Hey guys, I really want to thank you for walking with me today. Thanks so much for trusting me with your time and with your energy. I hope you keep showing up. And I want to remind you, there will always be room for you here. If I've added value to you of any kind today, I ask that you subscribe, like, comment, and share this podcast and this episode with someone that really matters to you. You can learn more about me at thechannelforhealing.com. That's where you'll find client testimonials, my blog. You'll learn more about the services that I offer, as well as how to contact me. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and on Instagram as well at The Channel for Healing. As always, I'm grateful for you. Until next time, friends.